Chapter 5. Attack. I didn't even scream. People say to me, "Weren't you terrified? Didn't you think you would be eaten alive?" I guess that would be the normal reaction, but it wasn't mine. Maybe I was in shock or denial. Maybe I was on autopilot. I'm not really sure, but when I look back on it now, I'm glad of one thing. I'm glad I never saw the shark closing in on me. I'm glad I never had more than a split second to wrap my brain around the fact that I was being attacked. If I had, I'm not sure I would have been so calm. I'm not sure I'd be able to live with the nightmares or ever go back into the water again. We'd only been surfing a half hour, and the waves were nothing spectacular. We were waiting for the next decent one to roll in, and Alana was floating no more than 15 feet from me. Her brother, Byron, and Dad Holt, not much farther away. I was bringing up the rear, and all of us were looking out to sea. I had a shiny, light blue Rip Curl watch on my left hand that I was dangling in the water. I sometimes wonder if the reflection of that watch in the clear water is what attracted the shark. That's when I was suddenly aware of a large gray object closing in on my left side. He was slow and silent. He really crept up on me. If I had had my head turned, I would have seen everything: the rolled back eyes, the triangle-shaped teeth, the sandpaper-like skin, the pointy snout, the pulled back gums. Luckily, all I saw was a blur. It's funny, you would think having your arm bitten off would really hurt, but there was no pain at the time. I felt pressure and a kind of jiggle tug, which I know now was the teeth. They have serrated edges like a steak knife, and they sawed through the board and my bones as if they were tissue paper. It was over in a few seconds. I remember seeing the water around me turn bright red with my blood. Then I saw that my arm had been bitten off almost to the shoulder. There was just a 3 or 4 inch stub where my limb had once been. My reaction, Alana has told me, was amazingly matter-of-fact and in control. I just said, in kind of a loud yet not panicked voice, "I just got attacked by a shark," and started to paddle away with one arm. I knew the shore was a very long quarter of a mile, but one thought kept repeating over and over in my head: get to the beach. Get to the beach. I also wasn't thinking that the shark was going to come back and attack me again. I wasn't trying to swim away from it, and I don't even know if it was still circling the area at the time. Now I realize I could have easily been bitten again and again. Once a shark gets a taste of you, it's been known to come back for more. But this didn't occur to me. "Beach," my mind screamed, while my voice was silent. "Get to the beach." Byron and Holt got to me in a flash. I said out loud to no one in particular, "I can't believe this happened." Holt's face was white and his eyes were wide. "Oh my God," he said, but he didn't freak out. Instead, he took control of the situation. He pushed me by the tail of my board, and I caught a small wave that washed me over the reef as I lay on my board. It's a small miracle that it was high tide. If it had been low tide, we would have had to go all the way around the reef to get to shore, a trip of a quarter of a mile that usually takes 10 minutes to paddle over a reef that's 20 to 30 feet in depth. Byron rode the same wave as I did, lying on his belly, pointing straight into the beach. Whatever emotions Holt, Byron, and Alana were feeling, they kept inside. Nobody panicked or lost their head. My arm was bleeding badly, but not spewing blood like it should, with a major artery open. I know now that wounds like mine often cause the arteries to roll back, tighten. I wasn't freaking out, but I was praying like crazy. "Please, God, help me. God, let me get to the beach." Over and over again. I was afraid, but not of anything specific, just kind of general. I've been hurt bad, and I don't know what's going to happen to me, kind of fear. Holt took off his gray long-sleeve rash guard. The reef was shallow at that point, only a couple of feet deep, so he stood up and tied the rash guard around the stub of my arm really tight to act as a tourniquet. "Hold on to my shorts, and I'll paddle you in," he instructed me. So I grabbed onto the bottom of his swim trunks and held on as he paddled both of us toward the shore. Byron was already ahead of us, stroking like crazy to the beach to call 911. Holt told me to keep talking to him. He kept having me answer questions like, "Bethany, are you still with me? How you doing?" I think he wanted to make sure that I didn't pass out in the middle of the ocean. So I was talking, although I don't know about what. I think I was just answering his questions and praying out loud and watching that shoreline get closer and closer. It was during this, the longest part of getting to the beach, those 15 minutes or so, that the fear began to wash over me. A thought flashed into my mind. You could die. But I pushed any negative vibes away quickly with a prayer. I'm in God's hands. I remember thinking, and I forced myself back into the here and now and concentrated on holding on. I remember seeing Alana. She was paddling next to me like always, looking mostly at the shore but sometimes glancing over to check me out. There was fear in her eyes, but she tried to hide it. As we got closer to the beach, I heard someone say, "Quick, go get the lifeguard." I knew that it was too early for them to be on duty, so I called out a couple of times, "They aren't on duty," but I don't know if anybody was listening to me. Land at last. As we got close, Holt got off his board and pushed me the last few feet to the beach. People were gathering all around me, and Holt lifted me off the surfboard and laid me on the sand. At that point, everything went black, and I'm not sure how long I was out of it. I kept coming in and out of consciousness, struggling to make heads or tails of what was going on. Holt got a leash from Jeff Waba, another surfer who was surfing farther out at tunnels and had come racing in when he heard what had happened to me. They removed the rash guard and tied the surf leash, which is a lot like surgical tubing, like a tourniquet. What happened after that is confusing, and it all tends to run together, a mix of sights, sounds, and feelings. Kind of like trying to remember a dream you had while you're dreaming. It all makes sense. But when you try to recall it, all you get are bits and pieces that don't quite add up. I remember being cold. I heard this happens when you lose lots of blood. People brought beach towels and wrapped me up in them. Everyone was concerned, but they all seemed to be assuring me in some way and trying to help me remain calm and comfortable. I remember starting to feel pain in my stump and thinking, this hurts a lot. And I know I said, "I want my mom," a few times. Funny how when you're scared, no matter how grown up you think you are, you do want your mommy to comfort you. I remember being very thirsty and asking Alana for water, so she ran up to a visitor, Fred Murray, who was jogging along the beach while the rest of his group here in Kauai for a family reunion relaxed at a beachfront rental home. "Come with me," he yelled, and they both raced back to get one of his family members, a man named Paul Wheeler, who was the captain and paramedic at a Hollywood, California fire station. "It's my friend. She needs water," said Alana. She explained as best she could because she was so in shock what had happened. Paul didn't hesitate. He bolted out the door to be by my side. "Don't worry," he said. "I can help. I'm a paramedic. Everyone, please stand back." I remember his face and the compassion in his voice. I think everyone was relieved that there was a professional on the scene. I know it comforted me to know it. Paul examined the wound and pulled on the tourniquet. At that point, Alana came with water, but Paul advised against it. "I know you're thirsty," he told me, "but you're going to need surgery and you want an empty stomach." A neighbor brought a small first aid kit in a Tupperware container, and Paul slipped on gloves so he could wrap my wound in gauze and feel around some more. I remember wincing as he poked around, but I know he had to do it. Paul felt my pulse. He shook his head. "She's lost a lot of blood," he said quietly. I remember a dog getting through the crowd and trying to lick me. He must have been worried about me too. I remember thinking, why is the ambulance taking so long to get here? Please, please hurry. Byron had broken into the back of his dad's pickup to fish out his cell phone and given all the information to the emergency operator, but no one had arrived on the scene. It felt like an eternity, and I could see Byron pacing. Holt decided we couldn't wait any longer. He and some other surfers lifted me onto Holt's board and carried me to the parking lot, where they put me in the back of his truck. Again, I kept passing out, only catching glimpses of what was going on and bits of frantic conversation. I remember the sirens of the emergency vehicles, high-pitched and shrill. I remember being stuck with needles and being slid on a stretcher into the back of an ambulance. I remember most clearly what the Kauai paramedic said to me. He spoke softly and held my hand as we were pulling out of the tunnel's parking lot. He whispered in my ear, "God will never leave you or forsake you." He was right.